A little dingling. It's also.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Welcome to the Songs of Hope conference here. We are just getting set up here with our speaker for 12 o'clock, Derreck. He's having a little bit of trouble getting online here, so we're just going to give him a couple minutes to see if he can connect so we can see him, and if not, we will have him connect by phone so we can all hear him. Sorry for the delay here.
All right, well, since we have everyone here already and ready to talk, while we're waiting for Derreck, if you know me, you know I love starting a meeting, talking about a positive or sharing a joy or sharing something that's bringing you happiness today, which I think we all need. And I feel like when we put that out there for everyone to share, it just becomes contagious. So if you have anything you want to share, some exciting news, or again, just something that's making you happy or bringing you joy, then please put it in the chat and we can chat. Put it in the chat and we can chat. Well, oh, someone noticed my earrings. Thank you. I know I was feeling a little fancy today, and I found 2 matching earrings, which is kind of a miracle around these parts. So I put them on. So thank you for noticing. Holly's reporting beautiful weather in Florida. Oh, Holly, I'm very, very jealous of you because up here in Boston, it's still cold, and it's you know, it's a little sunny today, but yesterday it was just rainy and raw, and oh, it's hard to have energy on those days. So send that sunshine and warmth up to the Northeast because we need it. Let's see. Carla shared she's going to be an auntie and her sister's having a boy. That's so exciting. Yay. We love that type of news. Congrats, Carla. Someone says they have their lemon water. Wow. So if you've been on my webinars, I like to say if I have water, I have a seltzer today. So I have to get my lemon water ready. But I'm glad you have your lemon water. Lauren made a blanket for Mariella, who just welcomed a baby boy. That's so exciting. What a special gift, Lauren. I'm sure she'll love it. Claire's drinking Coke at 12 p.m. We need our caffeine some way, right? Congrats on finding out the gender. All right, what else do we have? Arminda shares an accomplishment her daughter Tiana this week, and I hope that's so great to hear. I don't know what the exact accomplishment is, but that's so exciting because any accomplishment is so great to achieve. Let's see. Oh, someone's making their Nana's making them breakfast. That's great. Hannah has plans tonight to watch Little Shop of Horrors with her roommate, so that's exciting. Nancy's having fun with her son. All my kids are up, so I'm tying something right now. Jess passed a huge final project. Wow, that's a relief. Congrats, Jess. Nancy, I didn't get to finish yours, but it said you finished the life cycles. Let me scroll up. Life cycles, butterflies and frogs, and you ended with face painting. That's so special. Let's see. If anyone's looking for is looking for a way to stay in track with water intake and macros, try LifeSum. See, someone said good morning. Good morning, Bashillion children. You can hear my children in the background. I apologize. All right, let's see. My husband's birthday is on Thursday, so doing a small surprise party between me and the kids. I like it. That's so, you have to get really creative with these during these times for birthdays. Oh, Caitlin said she worked out for the first time in a while. Oh, there's my daughter. Tiana got an internship as a fashion blogger. That's so exciting. Okay, well, all right. It looks like Derreck is on with us now, so I'm so glad we got to share those joys. As we start our session with Derreck, I am one of the many Montessorians who registered for the conference. I was looking forward to Derreck's keynote presentation. So I'm really, really excited to have Derreck here. I'm going to hand it over to Chris to do his formal introduction. But we are so excited, and thank you for everyone for sharing your happiness and joys. And I hope it lifted the spirits of others, because it always helps lift mine. And oh, great, they're still coming in. Nancy's son is graduating this weekend. That's amazing. Yes, I agree. Tiana, definitely share your blog. We'd love to see it. And great. Thank you, everyone.
Well, you're in a familiar position, Barbara. I know that position well. With my kids, they love to hang and climb and all those wonderful things. Well, excited to have Derreck here. Thanks for your patience and getting that worked out, everybody. So let me introduce him to you. So Derreck Kayongo was born on June 25th, 1970 in Kampala, Uganda, just before General Idi Amin Dada seized power in a military coup. The new regime became known for its brutality, and today Idi Amin is one of history's most notorious dictators. As violence spread through the country and civil war erupted, Kayongo and his family became refugees in Kenya. He later immigrated to America to attend university. Today, he is a successful entrepreneur and human rights innovator. Though most well known as a 2011 CNN hero and founder of the Global Soap Project, Kayongo is an expert in environmental sustainability and global health, as well as the current CEO of the National Center for Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2016, the Georgia State Senate passed a resolution recognizing Kayongo's incredible journey from refugee to CEO. So I'm so delighted that we get to share some time with Derreck, and welcome to Songs of Hope. Derreck, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Can you turn on your video?
Oh, I thought I did turn on my video. Oh, let's see. Hold on a second. You guys want to see me? This is good. Okay, here we go. My video. Can you see
There you
it?
are. I see it.
Hi, is everybody? How are you guys doing? Well, Chris and everybody and all those people who have put this together, thank you so much for having me. I really wanted to spend some time with you guys to talk about my journey, and especially in these really trying times. as you all know, many of us sort of crumble and lose focus and lose interest and get depressed and stressed because of the incredible pressure that trying times can bring to our lives. But I wanted to share with you my trying time and how I dealt with it and what came out of it. As you all know, and you've heard from Scott and Chris, and one of the things that happened to me when I was a child was I had wonderful families. I had a mom and dad who were lovely parents, and they were both teachers, like most of you. And my mom realized very quickly that teaching doesn't pay very well, and so she said, "You know what? I'm going to try something new. I'm going to become an entrepreneur and teach myself a brand new skill so that I can actually participate in this marketplace." So she morphed from being a teacher to a wedding gown seamstress. And I joke all the time that she didn't have mannequins for flower gown dresses. So guess who the mannequin was? I was the mannequin. So I joke all the time that I was a cross dresser since I was the age of 5. And you know, we went through that particular process, but I enjoyed my childhood with my mom. And then my dad, on the other hand, also as a teacher, morphed from being a teacher to become then a soap maker, which he professionalized very well and did very, very well and taught me how to make soap. And we're going to talk about his profession in a minute here. But my dad and mom then built a big enterprise. And guess who comes into power? Idi Amin. Idi Amin got into power. And if you don't know who Idi Amin is, you should Google him. Forrest Whitaker, who is a wonderful actor, acts Idi Amin in The Last King of Scotland, where he shows he's this reprobate of a man, destroying not just my country, but my village, destroys my parents' lives. And we end up losing all our business and all our lovely interruptions and beautiful things that we had earned as a family. And we are kicked out of the country to become refugees. Um, and I was shocked to go from a child who went to private school, like the Montessori, to end up in a refugee situation. And so that transition was really, really tough. And the war lasted for about 7 years. And for those of you who are wondering what that means and what that looks like, well, you're seeing it right now in a very small way. So, for example, in the US, with this pandemic that we have, COVID-19, you are asked to social distance. It's a choice. It's a lovely little choice. Can you social distance? Well, ours was different. We had to be in our homes by 5 o'clock. There was what we call a curfew. And the curfew lasted for 4 long years. Can you imagine that? Having a curfew for 4 long years, restricted movement. And that means that our economy failed. We've never recovered from that, to be honest with you. It also meant that our schooling, we were back in our schooling. We were so regressed that we actually, I was at least 2 years behind schedule in my graduation. But also, what really was a big deal was that then we left the country to become refugees in Kenya. Well, the good thing about this is that in Kenya, I'm adopted by a lovely American woman and a British woman. The American woman was from Pittsburgh. For those of you who've never been to Pittsburgh, you should go. It's a lovely little place. But she was really, really tough. If you've never met women from Pittsburgh, you should meet them. They are very, very tough, blue collar, hardworking, no nonsense kind of people. But anyway, Marge and I became very good friends. And at that friendship, we created this incredible bond. And in that bond, she says, Derreck, rather than despair, why don't you do some exams and you can get a scholarship to go to the US to go to school? And I said, really? She said, yeah. I did the exams. I passed the exams, fortunately, and I got a chance to come to the US to go to school. When I landed in the US, it was an amazing scene. You know, it's this incredible place we call Philadelphia. That's where I landed, the city of brotherly love, as they call it. In Philadelphia, I checked into a hotel, and in the hotel, it was a remarkable, beautiful hotel. And as I walked around in the hotel room, there was, you know, beautiful linens. The bed was fantastic. A little veranda, and I went into the bathroom. And in the bathroom, there were 3 bars of soap. facial soap, body soap, and hand washing soap. I asked myself, what's the difference? Why do they have body soap? Because remember, my father made soap, and I knew something about soap. So I questioned this idea and this notion of why Americans had 3 bars of soap. Well, I figured it's Americans being bougie, the rest of us use 1 bar of soap and it's called soap. Yeah, that's it. So I took the 2 bars, put them in my bag for another day. Well, guess what? I came back the next evening, and do you know what they had done? They had replaced the soap. I said, wow, you guys replaced the soap? Well, I'm a former refugee. I'm going to steal the heck out of the soap. So I took the 2 bars, put them in my bag for another day. Well, they kept on bringing soap for 3 good days. And all those 3 days, I was stealing the soap. In stealing the soap, I realized, oh my goodness, maybe they're going to charge me for the soap. I didn't have enough money on me. So I said, you know what? No, I'm going to give back the soap to the hotel because I can't afford it. So I collected all the stolen soaps that I had stolen, took them back downstairs to the concierge to give them back. Well, the concierge walked up to me and says, can I help you? He was African American. He was very elegant and wonderful. I said, yeah, you can help me. I said, I have a secret for you. He said, what's the secret? I said, I've been stealing your soap. He said, what? From the hotel? I said, no, you keep on bringing me soap. I can't afford it. Take it back to the housekeepers. Tell them not to charge me for it. Well, he burst out laughing and he said, well, no, Derreck, this is part of your hotel bill. And you see all these Americans here? All these Americans steal soap too. So you're good, brother. And that began our friendship. And he was laughing and teasing me and that kind of thing. And as I walked away from him with my little stolen soaps, I went back to him and I said, hey, what about the partially used bar of soap? What happens to that? Do you throw those out as well? And he says, yeah, we throw those out. And I said, but I only use it once. He said, yeah, but we can't have people use somebody else's soap. So every time you use a bar of soap, as an elite hotel, we throw that out and we bring you brand new bars of soap. That way we look elite and lovely and gorgeous for you. I said, wow, okay. So I went back to my room, and to be honest with you, I knelt down on my bed with tears rolling down my face, and I just could not believe that I had just come from a country that helped my father make soap. We did very well. He became a very wealthy man, and then lost everything to the war, which was our crisis. And we became refugees. And as a refugee child, I then saw the powerful function of soap in a human being's life, which, by the way, now is so pertinent. We're told to wash our hands every time we touch anything. Soap is so important. It's one of the most amazing inventions by a human being. And so as a refugee child, I saw the power of soap because we didn't have any of that in the refugees community. And so I saw kids having diarrheal diseases, we saw cholera, we saw typhoid, all the waterborne diseases that come with poor hygiene, young girls dropping out of school because boys made fun of them. So I really got to grips with this idea of hygiene and how powerful hygiene can affect not just one person, but a whole economy as we are seeing it right now. And so on my knees is when I discovered this idea of recycling all the partially used bars of soap that are thrown away by hotels. And in doing that, I built a whole business around it. It was then called the Global Soap Project. Some of you remember me from CNN and getting a beautiful award for that work. But I wanted to tell you how I built it and the impact it has had globally since we began this whole process. So as you all know, America has a lot of hotels. So guess how much hotel soap is thrown away every year in the US, excluding 2020, because this is a different year. We don't know how much is going to happen this year. But every year, come up with a number in your mind of how much soap is thrown away every year by American hotels. And I'm going to tell you the number in a quick second. Are you there? Okay, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Well, American hotels throw away 800 million bars of soap every single year. 800 million. That is equivalent to 2.6 million bars of soap every single day. That's how much we waste by throwing away all that amount of soap. In juxtaposition, we have about 2 million kids globally that die due to poor hygiene. And you as teachers would know that kids need to have a healthy environment. They need to wash their hands to stay healthy so that their truancy rates don't go high, but we want them to go down. And so looking at those numbers, I figured, what can I do to solve this problem? And so I came up with a process and invented a technique of how to get rid of the germs off of that soap and then turn it into brand new soap. So I'm going to walk you through that whole process because I know that the first thing you guys are thinking, oh, yucky, yuck, 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 yuck. Used soap, who's going to use that? Well, you're true, you're right. We are not giving you used soap to use, but we're going to turn it into brand new soap. So this is the process we did. The first process was to peel the soap. So we had all these peeling potato peelers, you know, that you guys have at home. I have the largest number of potato peelers in the whole world because as volunteers come to my factory to peel, they leave behind the potato peeler. So we peel the first layer off, which is what you use, and then we grind the soap into a dust, and then we ziplock the soap and take the air out of that soap in these big plastic industrial bags and create what? A vacuum. And you know, germs don't do very well with vacuums. So what I did was create that vacuum, and in doing so, I kept the soap in a vacuumless space for 2 weeks, which then killed the germs, because what do germs do? They breathe and dance and laugh and dance the Macarena. Well, I did not give them that chance. So that's the most organic way of killing those germs. People who failed to recycle soap, like I did, were using chemicals, other chemicals to add to the soap to actually kill the germs, and they would change the chemistry of the soap. That means that it became irritant to your skin. So the FDA did not approve those processes, but mine was very organic. And so before you knew it, we had a brand new place for recycled soap. Once I recycled it, I then built a factory, and we chopped the soap into brand new bars of soap, and we tested it for 12 pathogens that we're supposed to test for to make sure that it's clean. Once the soap passes those 12 pathogens, then I know I'm ready to take the soap back home to Africa, to Latin America, to South Asia, to give it to people who needed it. The first group that I gave this soap to was in Nairobi, Kenya. And those of you who've never been to Nairobi, you should go. Kenya is a beautiful country. It's the land of Mufasa. You know, it's a beautiful country, the land of the Maasai, the Indian Ocean, the Rift Valley. And so, because as a refugee in Kenya, I thought I should go back to the scene of the crime and give the first bars of soap to the mamas there. And you should have seen the joy of these mamas getting that first bar of soap that smelled so beautiful. And the first thing they do is smell, and they're like, oh my God. And they love the soap so much. And you could tell after the first distribution of soap that not only were the kids getting much more healthier, they were also getting much more what? Confident in going back to school, especially the girls. Because what do girls do when they are made fun of by the boys during their period years or months? When they go through a period, the boys make fun of them because of poor hygiene. So usually girls drop out of school because of that bullying by the boys. But now, here's an opportunity for them to bathe, but not only bathe, but bathe with beautiful soap, the Avendas, the Neutrogenas, the Brugaris, and smell good. They can then go back to school with decency. And so for me, it was a delight to see my soap, my innovation, not only affect the hotel industry, which needed to get rid of that soap out of the environment. So it was an environmental task for me, by cleaning up the environment and taking that soap out of the environment, because soap is what? A chemical. And when you drop it into your rubbish, it infects the rubbish spaces. You know, the landfills don't get healthier in their digesting of all the rubbish that we throw away if we add soap to it. So by cleaning up soap out of the rubbish areas, we were able to make it easy to do. The second solution was that then we were able to provide a real life-saving tool to refugee camps, to humanitarian disasters like the one we had in Haiti. Remember the earthquake? I was the first one to take soap to Haiti to help fight tetanus and all these soap-related diseases that we needed. So yes, this has been a remarkable thing that we've done. We recently were bought out. My company was bought out by a new company called Clean the World. If you Google Clean the World, you see they have a full operation where hotels donate all their soap, and they are now in over 100 countries around the world. So that is what I've built in my crisis years, and that's what I've been able to use to solve a real problem during a crisis moment. What does this all mean, therefore? Well, as many of you know, a lot of us with this COVID-19 are wondering, what can I do to change the world? Because every time there's a crisis, there's an opportunity for us to change the way the world works. Yes, it is a bad crisis, but it's an opportunity for us to rethink who we are as people. What is our mantra? What is our legacy? Why are we here? And as we think through those things, then we think about what are our skill sets? What skill sets can we bring to the table to help inform the marketplace and create new businesses? Yes, we are losing jobs left, right, and center, but we can also create new jobs and create better jobs, and also be very fair in the way we pay back people and the way we compensate people. This is a chance for us to rethink our economy and think of ways we can actually use things like diversity and inclusion to bring new voices to the table so that they can actually invent like I did. If I wasn't allowed to come to this country as a refugee kid, as an African refugee kid, I would have never found a way to recycle soap. So that inclusion and that diversity to the country has helped me build a business that was able to hire people, regular Americans. So it reminds me of Sir Isaac Newton. In the 1800s, there was a London plague, black plague that hit the city so hard. And most of you remember that Sir Isaac Newton was a lovely scientist, and he was quarantined for about 2 years. 2 years at Cambridge. What did he do with that time? Rather than wallow in grief and rather than wonder what can I do, what I need a job, which he should have done, well, guess what? He decided, I'm going to use this time to reinvent and invent new systems. So during those 2 years, Sir Isaac Newton discovered the principles of optic technology. He invented gravity. Yeah, he thought about gravity because he saw an apple fall from the tree and say, oh my goodness, what is that? So kinetics. He also invented calculus during that time. So what does that mean? If you take this time and observe things around you, you can then see things that need to be changed, be it in your teaching career, be it in your personal life. You can reinvent yourself as a better teacher. If you're a student, you can reinvent yourself as a better student. You can learn more by doing more. And I think that in these times, those of us who sit back and say, well, I'm waiting for things to happen to me, that would not be a good strategy. But if you lean in and say, okay, I'm here and I have skill sets, what else can I do? You'll be surprised what the world will look like by you engaging and doing remarkable things. So for me, by building the Global Soap Project, I was able to tap into several skills. One was I was able to become a leader of grand proportion, which is what led me to get the CEO job the National Center for Civil and Human Rights. I would have never been a CEO quality kind of person if I had kept my little idea to myself, and if I had never gone through the rigor of building a whole operation that included recruiting over 1,000 hotels. We had 5,000 hotels in the program. Can you imagine? I had to coordinate 5,000 hotels. And that means I had to build networks in Las Vegas, in Orlando, in New York, in Chicago. That network process grew my network, my personal network. I have so many friends all over the country that are interested in business. So networking can really help you grow at large scale. I call that power networking. Number two, I was able to develop confidence in who I am as a person. Some of us lack confidence to do things because we never try to do things because we fear to fail. And I did not really worry about that. Failure for me was a welcome attribute, because I think that failure is a sister to success. And if you want to be successful, you've got to learn how to fail. And so I fail all the time. But I use that particular failure to actually articulate and better understand my new pathway to success. So I think that this fear to fail has become this retardation that doesn't allow us to conquer. But my friends, people fail all the time, and they try all the time. So that's the second lesson here. Learn how to not fear failure, learn to use it as a way to succeed. The third thing that I learned about myself as I built the Global Soul Project is that I'm actually a good salesperson. I can actually sell the notion to somebody and they actually see my passion and my emotion. But I really learned how to communicate and be able to tell people what needed to be done. And by doing that, I have learned how to expose ideas to people who are not capacious enough to investigate this idea of what can be done to solve problems. Or how else do you think we've gone to the moon? How else do you think we've built Facebook and these technologies like Zoom? It's through investigation, through selling, and through doing remarkable things to get people on board. The fourth thing that I learned was that I was able to find my passion by sitting back and saying, what am I really interested in? What do I really care about? I was able to then figure out, oh my goodness, I care about health. I care about people being healthy, because healthy people can then do remarkable things. When you're not healthy, it's hard for you to envisage new products and new ideas because you're constantly embattled by poor health. So I figured if I can bring a new tool to the marketplace that can help my fellow Africans, my friends in Latin America, my friends in Caribbean, my friends in South Asia, to be healthy, they can then go to school. They can get doctorates. They can do very well. So for me, the common denominator was my passion. So what are you passionate about? What do you really care about? This is the time in this crisis to investigate that particular truth. Really sit down and spend some time and figure out what are you passionate about and go fight for it. And so the fifth thing that I learned is having passion, having purpose in life is wonderful. But if you don't have the zeal to fight for it, then nobody will ever bring your passion to fruition but yourself. So this idea of having a burning fire to achieve your goal in life is what drives all of us that have done these remarkable things like the Global Soul Project. Right now, I have a new passion and I spend every day thinking about it, working about on it, fighting for it. And that journey is really what life is all about. People say I'm bored, I'm inuned. Why are you bored? There's so much to figure out. There's so much in your life that needs to be sorted out. The reason why you're bored is that you're not interested in your own life. Because if you are interested in your life, you would be busy as a bee trying to figure out what can you do today, tomorrow, and the next day. You'd come up with a plan to get to your passion, to get to your strength. So what are the lessons have I learned in doing my work? one of the lessons I've learned is that I would be miserable if I never followed my passion. That's a lesson that is a tough one. There's nothing as going to your deathbed, God forbid, and knock on the wood, without having investigated your purpose in life. So my lesson here is that if I had to die today, I would go to my grave knowing that I tried and I worked hard to get to my passion and to get to the real reason why I am here in life. Number two, a second lesson that I've learned is that I have learned to collaborate with as many people who are not like me as possible by working with people who are accountants, white people, Asian people, Haitians, Latinas, doctors, and people with different professions. I have been able to see different professions and different people synchronize and come around my whole passion and help me deliver it in beautiful ways. So this idea of inclusion and being part of so many parts of the world and traveling all over the world has really made me appreciate life much more better than I did before, when I was bored and secluded and routine driven, going to work from 8 to 5 and coming back and eating the same soup, the same food, and going to bed and reading a little book here and there, maybe go to church. And that was so boring. But I found that the world is so big. Can you imagine a refugee kid that has discovered, I've been to Japan, I've been to Australia, I've been to England, I've been to, Germany, I've been to the US, can you imagine that passion that I had has had me travel all over the world. And that's been a big lesson, that I don't have all the answers. The answers are actually found in the people I get to meet. The more people you meet, the more your questions will be answered, is a lesson that I've learned. The more people you meet, the more your questions will be answered. So the more you stay home, the more you don't do anything, the more you don't investigate, the more questions you will have, and the less answers you will have to those questions. So that's the third lesson I've learned. The fourth lesson, which has been really, really cool, has been that I've got to really get a chance to show my kids what success looks like. Because all of us sort of give people books, read this book about success, read this book. There's so many success books out there that I don't know which one is a bad one, which is a good one. But I think as parents, as people who have children, as people who follow us, I think the more people see your success story up and close, the more they get to learn those lessons. So my two kids get to see me build the factory from scratch, just like I saw my dad build his factory from scratch. And they learned lessons about patience, about resilience, about building goals and objectives and following them. And I see that now in my son. My son loves basketball, but he also loves education. And I've seen him dedicate himself. He wakes up every day at 5 o'clock in the morning, goes to the gym. He has a regiment of success. Rather than me giving him a book and say, hey, Kevin, you want to be successful? Here's a book by Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Go read it and you'll be successful. Well, that's a good book. I don't disagree. But what about you being the emblem, you being the benchmark for his success? So I've thought to myself that the more I work successfully and the more I work towards my success, people around me get to see my discipline, my dedication, my failure, my fear, my laughter, my crying, my determination, and they decide, oh my goodness, that's how success looks like. Because when you read a book, you don't see the journey itself. You are just told the stipulations of what successful people do, but you never see their whole journey. They tell you, oh, 7 habits of highly effective people have goals. Okay, I have goals, but what does a journey to the goal look like? So by my kids seeing the example of me coming in late, and they said, Dad, where have you been? it's midnight. And I said, well, I had to be at the factory, and I was at the factory. Or if I travel to go do my speaking engagements, and I tell them I'll be gone for a week traveling to do my speaking engagements, they see that struggle, they see that work. So it's the work ethic that we want to show, and that's the lesson I've learned. Don't give kids a book to read alone. You've got to follow that with real examples of what power working looks like, the ethic of work, so that when they see the ethic of work, they appreciate it and they hang in there and they do of that struggle towards success. So I've learned a big lesson about reading books. They're not enough. You've got to follow a real life example of somebody who's actually living the work of that book. So when they say showing up is 80% of success, well, show up. That's a Woody Allen quote, I'm told. Show up. So time is really important in building successful ventures. Lastly, I've enjoyed learning an interesting lesson about myself, and that is that I have learned how to understand the power of friendships, people who take care of you when you're on your journey to success. There are not very many people that can stay in there and hang in there with you, but those are really, really important. Friendships are part of your journey. The more friends you have, the more you let them know what your interests are, the more they help you. They're different from networks. So networks are important to get you organize things and do things, and they also have a vested interest in you being successful. But friendships are different. A friend is somebody who you can call at midnight and say, hey, Jennifer, or hey, Solomon, I am running into a rough time today. I did not make this thing work. What do you think I should do? And you can confide in them and really, really get their response that is honest and genuine. It's not a platitude. It's something that you get from them that is really loving, gentle, and kind, but that is very, very focused. So if you don't have any friends that you can really call at midnight or at 7 in the morning or at 12 during the day and scream and yell and cry and lay down your frustration, then you need to make more of those, because those are the reasons why we build things like the Global Soap Project, why we build things like Microsoft, where we build things like McDonald's. These are tough stories that have been built on all things, but most important of all, good and honest friendships. So I'm going to stop there and say it has been a joy being with you and spending some time with you, albeit in the middle of COVID-19. But I will conclude by saying, never underestimate a crisis. Crisis is good. It can be a great place for you to do remarkable things. And I hope that works out for you. Thank you again, and God bless.
Well, thanks so much for that, Derreck. That was really inspirational.
Thank you, guys.
Well, I'd love to have a time for some questions for you. This is an incredible story, and I'm sure that many individuals have questions. I know I have several questions that I'd like to ask you as well. Let me open it up to everyone attending here. If you have questions for Derreck, please put it in the chat, and we'll go through them. A lot of comments here. This is great, Derreck.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for blessing me.
Well, while folks are writing, I have a question. I love how you talked about networking and work ethic and the concept that it's more than just reading a book. And I'm a big reader myself, so I think about that a lot. I was in my presentation yesterday, I was talking a little bit about that with music. It's more than just learning music. It's spending time with people that love music and that are passionate about music, because we get that it rubs off on us if we experience that tangible excitement that they have for it. And I really relate to what you said with that. How do we find people like that? I think would be my question to you. How do you find someone when you read a book and are just so inspired by it you think, I want to live like that. I want to follow that kind of schedule. Or I want to do that. How do you find people like that to see them living out those principles and those ideas?
You know, for me, I think that most people think that they come up with a vision and they have to find somebody who has exactly that vision, and therefore they're going to sort of pick up their template and use it. But no, there are different people who are doing different things and being successful at those things. It could be that you have a fellow teacher that you work with who has a program that is really successful, and you look at their success and you wonder to yourself, how do they get to the point of making that program successful? And it could be that they were able to be organized first. They were able to sit down and talk to several people that were doing something similar, and then decide to come up with their own system that fits their world, because there's no template that fits all of us. Everybody has to come up with their own template to then become successful, because if you use somebody else's template, their realities and how they built the template determine why they became successful. So for me to become successful in the US, I had to have been with a father who made soap. I had to have been in a refugee camp to see the power of soap and the need for soap. Then I had to be in a hotel room to see the wastage of soap. So I had to really learn from my dad how to actually build a business in the first place. So I already had that particular vision. And it was easy for me to go back to him and say, Dad, how did you do this? How did you do that? So there are people in your life that you have not communicated with in a while, in a long time. And if you actually you guys go back to your school get-togethers after you've graduated. I don't know what they call them, but after graduation, you go back to your
reunion.
Yeah, reunions, yes. And you will see people who are successful that were your classmates. Well, go back to them and say, hey, I know you're successful. You're doing very, very well. Well, tell me how you became successful. Well, guess what? I have just done a request from my university. I went to a very interesting university called Tufts University. And I went to the alumni page to figure out who went to university at Tufts and who can I tap into to help me in my new venture that I'm working on. Guess who went to my university? The founder of eBay went to my university. The current CEO of JP Morgan, Mr. Diamond, went to my university. He went to Tufts.
Wow.
And as I went through the list of people who went to Tufts, guess what my reunion goal will be next time? I want to meet the CEO of JP Morgan. I want to meet the CEO of eBay. So you'll be surprised. People you went to school with, people who were your former professors, people who were your playmate. Where are they and what are they doing? That's who you want to follow up with. They're right there before you, and you're not tapping into them because you have forgotten about them and you want to figure out who your new friends are going to be. By the time you get to find new friends and new people, it takes almost 2 to 3 years to build that relationship. But for you to go back to your old friends who are already successful, it will take you 30 minutes on a call to reignite their passion and their joy and love for you. They're like, oh my goodness, where have you been? What have you been up to? Let's grab coffee. And before you know it, you have somebody to emulate, somebody to guide you. So call back your old friends and come back into that space and reignite them. That's how you get to those friendships, and that's how you get to those people that are great mantras of success.
That's such an incredible response. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to this. A little personal story. The fellow who's helping with the technical aspect of our sessions, Keith, is a childhood friend of mine. We went to 4th and 5th grade together. And when we were starting all this project for Open Door and for virtual sessions, I called him up to help. And so I certainly know the value of building and tapping into relationships that we've had throughout our lives. One of my friends, I was watching the movie Fast and Furious 5, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago when that came out. And I saw my classmate's name. He wrote the score, the music for Vin Diesel's series. And I called him up. I said, oh my gosh, you did that score. Let's do something together. And we did a project a couple months later. And you're so right. I think it's so intimidating to think, oh boy, I can't contact that person, or they're so important or established that it's out of the realm of possibility for me. But if we look at a lot of even our own contacts, even if maybe we didn't know that person, but there's a friend of a friend, or there's some degree of separation. There's so much interest. I think people have a lot of passion about connecting with individuals, connecting with you, Derreck, and being a part of this event, seeing your name on the AMS conference and reaching out to you. I think it's a wonderful thing to just step out and contact people. We never know what we're going to find, and that kind of inspiration and education that we can receive is so incredible. We've got a couple questions here I want to make sure I address here. Here's one. How did you handle being inside for 4 years, and what did you do to not feel like your life was half day?
The first few months I ran crazy, and I ran my mom crazy, I ran my dad crazy, but it's because we did not sit down as a family to think about what do we do with this particular time that we have. And my parents then figured out, okay, we don't know how long this is going to be, so we can do a couple of things, and we decided to come up with family goals. And my mother taught herself how to sew, literally. She learned this new skill during this period of uncertainty. She learned how to cook. She was a very good baker, and that bakery sort of worked with her bridal business. So she had a bridal business. She learned how to bake, and if you came to pick up a dress that she had made, she would then sell you her cake regimen, cakes, cookies, popcorn. She learned how to do those things very well. In other words, we figured out, what do you want to do during this time that has an opportunity for you to turn into a business, or to turn into an opportunity to do other things. So my siblings became very good. My brother became a great musician. He ended up getting into the music industry and did pretty well. He sang the first R&B Swahili song in Africa, and it went platinum. He's known for that in the country now, and he did that at a very young age. My sister wanted to go into fashion, and she became Miss Makere in Uganda. We did a lot of things. So it's easy to say, I don't know what to do, because you're not being thoughtful about who you are, what your skills are, trying out different things. Be busy. Just try out different things. You may try painting. You may try sewing. You may try what is it out there that you can actually try. So we tried all these kinds of things, and they ended up becoming businesses. I learned soap making from my dad by staying at home. But when you wallow in despair, chances are despair will become stress. Stress will become depression. And before you know it, you may come out of this not with COVID-19, but with depression. And that's a disease too that you have to worry about, that it brings on other diseases. So no. There are things you can learn that are great, and I think that that's a chance for us to do that.
Thanks for saying that. We've got a couple of questions here. Seems a bit of a similar theme, so I'll try to combine them here. So about motivation, and how do you motivate people or lift people up who they're not feeling it, they're not ready to see the good things ahead of them, or the opportunities ahead of them?
I call this the infection bag. If you are doing something and people don't look like they're interested or they're motivated, give them time. They remind me of kids. My daughter, I took my daughter to play piano, and I paid a lot of money for her to learn how to play piano. And in doing that, she was doing it because I wanted her to do it. She didn't do it because she really liked to do it. But over time, she dropped the whole piano thing, classically trained. And I said, you know what, maybe I should let her take her time, get back to piano by herself, rather than me trying to woo her and pressure her into actually doing it, because then she won't do it because she loves it. She'll do it because I'm forcing her to do it. All I tell people, the way to motivate people to do things is by you doing those things that you're good at and becoming successful at them. Because then they will then be pulled by that success and say, well, Derreck was here the other day and he was a regular guy. Look at him now and look at me. Maybe I need to actually get my ass off the chair and do something. So I think that motivating is basically you doing the very best of what you do well. That forces people to look at you and then emulate you. But you bring them along by saying, help me with this, help me with that. Don't tell them you need to do this. Just say, look, John, I'm working on this great project, and I know you're good at this particular area of that project. Can you help me with it? And then that way, as they help you with it, they get motivated to do more. But if you say, hey, here's our school project and we need to do this and you guys all have to be on board, I don't like the project. But what I may like about the project is that part of the project that interests me. So what I do when I'm picking up a new project, I figure out who are in the room and I say, oh, I know his skill, I know her skill, I know his skill. So I break the project down into small tidbits. And I say, look, you're a good bricklayer, go lay the brick. You're a good fashion person, go do the design of the interior. You're good at wiring, go do the wiring of the house. I don't say to people, let's go build a house, because then I don't want to build a house, but I like to lay bricks. Yeah? So when you break down the tasks of the project into small pieces, and then you give those pieces to people who really care about those pieces, that's how you motivate people to actually do the whole project. So people don't usually see the grand vision of the project, because if you give it to them, it's too much to bear and to carry around. But they may actually see the smaller pieces of the vision that fit right into their motivation, that fit right into their inspiration, that fit right into their skill set. Give that to them and then let them do the rest. So that's how I motivate people. I give them the pieces that are relevant to them, that they care about. And then before they know it, once they finish their construction, I then take the little piece and say, this is where it fits in the vision, boom. And then before you know it, the whole mosaic is complete. So that's how I motivate people.
Yeah, everyone can't play the same part. We can't all have, in a body, we can't have everyone be a foot or a head or a hand. We all play a different role within a creation of something, if it's a business, if it's a project, if it's anything. And I think that you're absolutely right in saying that a lot of the time it's hard for people to see the whole vision. I was speaking with an architect recently, and he was telling me how he struggles to communicate his vision for a floor plan because it's so difficult for many of his clients to see it. And he does a lot of 3D mock-ups, so he actually shows it. But he said, boy, most of the time I show someone pieces on a paper and they don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
And we each have our own skills that we can do. And by laying it out in pieces, we can be more successful together. Here's a question about teenagers. How can you use the same concept with teenagers?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my daughter again, Lauren. And every time we wake up in the morning, I said to her, what are your plans for the day? And she said, I don't know, and what do you want to do in life? I don't know, what's wrong? I'm bored, she's bored, or she's on her phone playing games or talking to her friends. And so I said to her, well, Lauren, I'm going to give you a set of interesting facts for you to think about and use those things to guide you down the road. You don't have to do it right now, but it's something that you have to think about. Number one, while you're bored, there are kids that are your age, she's 15 years old, that are actually trying out different things. Just trying out different things. I'm not asking you to come up with a vision of your whole life, but I want you to try out as many things as you can. So guess what we've done? She tried out basketball, and she's very tall. She's 15 years old and she's 5'9". She's going to be 5'10" very soon. So we went to basketball, and she wasn't rough enough, if you want to put it that way, or boyish enough to play it again. I remember she rebounded the ball one time and she gave it back to the person she took the ball from. And I said, no, you got to give it back. No, you won the ball. So we dropped basketball, but she tried it and she said, that's very competitive. It's very rough. It's too much for me. I said, okay. Then we tried, as I mentioned, piano. She played classically trained piano. She had long fingers and could traverse the piano keyboard very beautifully. And then she got bored with the classic nature of the piano. She wanted something different. So I said, okay, fine. Then we tried swimming. She started off as the worst swimmer in her stream. Within the semester, she was the second best swimmer on the whole team.
Mm.
But guess what? She got bored with it. So she left it. And guess what she went back to? To piano. She's now composing beautiful songs. What I'm trying to say here is that don't mind them not looking like they're not interested. Just put as many things, give them as many chances to touch different things. They're going to then touch a button that will make the eureka moment come to life. But if you let them just sit around and they say, I'm bored, and you say, okay, I'm bored too. No, just, okay, if you're bored, do you want to come with me? I'm going to this little place. Do you want to come with me? And it could be the botanical garden and say, look, I have a little interest in horticulture. I want to go see the different flowers they've just planted. I took them to botanical. I took her to boutique shopping. I love fashion. So I took my daughter to boutiques. I said, do you want to go see my boutiques? I'm going to pick up some pieces. You can help me do that. And, we have lunch together. We talk about different. I never force anything on them. I just expose them to as much as I can. And they touch it and they say, I hate it, touch it, I hate it, touch it, I hate it. But then guess what? Eventually they come back to those things. And we are all victims of that. I hated my dad taking me to a factory to make soap. I hated it. I really hated it. It smelled, it was dirty, it was yucky. But guess what? I love it. I love it now. So don't worry, just expose them to as many things as possible. Their focus will come into being at that very moment when they are revealed the truth of what their passion is. So don't worry, just expose them.
That's a very powerful statement. I remember when I was a kid, I grew up on a ranch, and there was always a lot of work to do. So if I ever told my dad or mom I was bored, there was work to be done. So I learned quickly that was not a word I wanted to tell anybody, because I'd always have a job to do. I think what you're talking about is it's very much the Montessori philosophy, and following the child, and we let the child follow their interest. And in the classroom, if the child is not interested in something, we're not forcing them to go work on music or math or language. We're allowing them to explore. And our role as guides or teachers is to really have that magic or that excitement that we bring to show them. And I totally relate to you. My dad loved building projects. He built a couple of houses that we lived in as when I was a child, and he built houses for other people, and I hated it. I didn't know why he did all this stuff. And then 20 years later, I've built 7 different buildings myself and with my father, and it's something I love doing. Not quite to the extent of him, but I joke to myself, what happened to me? I hated this as a kid, and now I can't stop doing it. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, they look bored right now, but they would take those skills and use them for the good.
Yeah. Well, Derreck, I so appreciate you being here. This is a lot of fun to hear, to engage with you here. I know a tremendous story. Congratulations on your successes and the wonderful things that you've brought to the world. This is just incredible. Really a special person you are. So thanks so much for being with us. Yeah. I know we need to transition over to Annie, but wanted to just say thank you so much for being with us here at the conference.
Thank you very much, guys, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully at the main conference one of these days when they reopen it again. So hopefully we'll see you.
Yes, it's in Boston, so we'll be here.
Okay, all right. Take care and God bless.
Thank you.
All right, that's good.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, well, let's transition over to Annie.
Okay, yay. This is so exciting. So we'll get Annie on the panel here so we can greet her. If you are on this webinar or in the chat or part of this, you are familiar with Open Door Montessori. And if you're familiar with Open Door Montessori, you know Annie, because she is what makes Open Door Montessori so special. And there she is. Oh, Annie. Everyone is going to be so excited to see you and have you present live. You have a huge fan base here up in Boston, and I'm certain around the country now that Open Door is finally live. So we're just so thrilled that you're here. And you can see in the chats, everyone saying you're a star and that they're jumping up and down. And
Y'all have set the bar really high for this talk now.
no, we're so excited to have you here, Annie, and to
I'm excited to be here.
this is so great.
I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen because I have some.
Before you do that, I have to give you a formal introduction. I mean, they know you can open the door, but we have to. Yes. So let me just read so for those of you who don't know Annie, or maybe don't know this part of her. So Annie Bryner is a certified Montessori teacher in both the infant, toddler, and primary levels. She also has an extensive art and drama background and has taught both of these subjects, as well as archaeology, to Montessori elementary students for over 15 years. Annie is a frequent contributor to Montessori journals and parent education platforms, and has written multicultural curriculum for Fiddle Fox Music. She has taught for nearly a decade at the Village Montessori School in Bluemont, Virginia. And boy, is that school lucky to have you, Annie. Today, let's see, let me just go back here. And you are going to be talking about, oh, let me see. Let me just scroll up real quick. Oh, there's a little, let's see, the preparation of the adult. So there's well, I'll let you do your introduction there, because there's some like mix up on the website and I can't read it and I don't want to mess up what you have prepared. So anyways, welcome Annie. We're so excited and we're so thrilled that you're with us today.
Well, thank you so much for that incredible intro. I'm just gonna replay that on YouTube whenever I need it on a daily basis. Let me see if I can go ahead and share my screen here and get us over to some things that'll be nice for you guys to look at. Can you guys see that okay? Let's see. Barb, can you guys see that? Got it. Okay, great. So what we're going to talk about today is a topic that a lot of people, they've heard of it, but they're not exactly sure how to do it. And the reason I wanted to talk about this particular Montessori topic today is that I have been very, very lucky that for almost a decade now, I have worked at a Montessori school in Bluemont, Virginia, Village Montessori School, that does this particular topic better than any other place I've been. And so the things that I'm sharing with you today are not that I have any, deep, incredible insight. It's more that I have been the beneficiary of being in an environment and being guided by owners and heads of school in this particular school that do it really well. So I want to share with you what the school does. And so, but before we get into that a little bit, I want to talk about what we really mean when we're talking about the spiritual preparation of the Montessori adult. A lot of people, as soon as they hear that phrase, they say, oh, are we going to talk about religion? No, we're not talking about religion. Montessori is a philosophy, and we're talking about what Montessori was alluding to when she used the term spiritual preparation of the adult. So our part one here of this section is, what are we really talking about here exactly? This is a whole different component of Montessori. We all know that there are Montessori lessons and we can touch those things. We can move around different materials. We know that step 4, it follows step 3. But this is a little bit harder to wrap your arms around because it's dealing with things we can't see. And because of that, a lot of schools struggle with it. They know that they're supposed to be doing something called the spiritual preparation of the adult for their teachers and for their families, but they don't really know how to go about it because it's not very concrete. So let's start off by looking at some quotes from Dr. Montessori herself about the spiritual preparation of the adult. Here's one for you. The real preparation for education is a study of one's self. The training of the teacher is something far more than a learning of ideas. It includes the training of character. It is a preparation of the spirit. Now, a lot of people look at that and think, oh man, not only do I need to learn all of these lessons, I have to go through something that's going to help me become a different person? How exactly am I going to do that? Well, that's not exactly what it means. And we'll talk a little bit more in a minute. Here's another quote from her. It is not enough for the teacher to love the child. She must first love and understand the universe. She must prepare herself and truly work at it. Now, Dr. Montessori said herself, and she said teacher, but really this applies to all Montessori adults, regardless of gender and regardless of whether they're not in the classroom. Because if you think about it, parents and caregivers at home are the original teachers, right? So as a Montessori community, we want all of the adults in our environment to be going on a Montessori journey. And here's why we want to bother to do that. The child is part of a big triangle here. The child is learning from the environment, and part of the environment are the adults in the environment. If you've ever read a book called The Absorbent Mind, which is one of Dr. Montessori's most famous writings, she talks about in cultures all over the world, how the children, one of the ways that they learn is to work alongside the adults. Children go to the market on their mother's backs and look over their shoulder and learn all about what's happening in their community from that viewpoint. So the child, the environment, and the teacher or the adult are all very closely knitted together. So this is a big responsibility for adults. Not only are we preparing for the child to have direct interaction with it, but we are part of the environment ourselves, whether it's at school or at home. That child is going to look at what we do and copy it. And you can see children doing that all of the time. They mimic what we do, and that's how they learn how to be people, right? So let's move on a little bit. Now, when we talk about this, people are going to say, oh, well, how am I going to learn how to do this? This is such a huge job. And if we pay attention to what Montessori said, she talked about that the human mind takes in most of its information when we're very young. So how in the world are we going to learn a way to be a good model for these little children? Well, I'd like to posit that just because our sensitive periods are over and adults are pretty much fully formed, that we can't change. And rather than thinking we have to bring in a whole bunch of new knowledge, I would argue, and the people at my school would probably argue as well, that what we actually need to do is remember things that we already know. That what we need to do instead is sort of strip away some of the things that society has told us as adults that we need to be. And so we're going to take a look at those for a minute. So when you were a child, you were curious and interested in everything around you. You were learning how to be a being on this planet. But as you got older, one or more of the following things was probably drilled into your brain. Maybe not expressly that somebody came out and said it, but you learned it by being around other adults. One of these is, I don't need anybody, I'll handle it myself. This is a particular situation that happens a lot, especially in the United States. Our families are often spread out over an incredibly wide area. Most of us don't live in the same town or city where we grew up. Sometimes it's hard to make friends. And we have this sort of cowboy mentality a lot of times of, well, I'll just take care of it myself, which can be very isolating. How about, I have to be busy and producing all the time or I'm lazy? I know that's one that I struggle with. This idea that if you're not producing or making something, that you're not of any value. And this is something that a lot of times is demonstrated to us. It's one of the ways we get workaholics and people who never take vacation, never take time to take care of themselves. How about this one? My job is who I am. A lot of times people say, you know, to children, be when you grow up, and they expect a response like fireman or doctor or astronaut. Well, that's not what you want to be when you grow up. That's the work you want to do when you grow up. Maybe what you want to be when you grow up is kind or healthy or full of gratitude. We might want to rethink how we define ourselves. How about this one? The only time I'm valuable to society is during my working years. A lot of times in society, we disregard teenagers because they're not pulling in a full-time job. And those who have retired, we don't really give them a function in our society. And they can feel very isolated and lonely. We put all the concentration in many places on, are you working? Whether it's at home, raising a family, or in the workplace. And consequently, that leads to the concept of, I'm too old or too young to be useful. Here's another one. The things I enjoy are frivolous. I remember when I was growing up, I was very interested in theater and drama. And the message was given to me in no uncertain terms that those things were silly and I was going to need to get a real job someday. And so I shouldn't waste my time on them. Well, now I teach drama, so it all worked out well. But just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that it's frivolous. Here's a good one, and this happens to a lot of parents. Everyone else's needs are more important than mine. There's also, I need to hurry up. We're constantly going, faster, faster, faster. I need to win. I need to make a lot of money. And I need to fit in. There's actually a story I heard the other day from my husband about this. He was talking to a friend of his who had recently gotten married. And my husband, who knows this man very well, said, are you guys going to have kids? And his friend said, well, yeah. And he said, are you excited about it? And his friend said, well, it's what you do when you're an adult. That man's probably not quite ready to start a family, but he's feeling the pressure that he's supposed to do something and that what he wants isn't important. So these are all just some of the things that we a lot of times hear as we've grown up. And the adults working in your schools and bringing their children to the school have had a lot of these put on them. And what we want to do is think about, if you're living by these guidelines, what kind of an example or a model are you being for the children in your care? If they think that working is the only thing of value and that what their passions and desires aren't important, we're simply going to end up with another generation of inside the box thinkers who are exhausted and sad and lonely. So one of the things that my school does when a new adult comes into our environment, either as a staff member or as a parent, is start putting them in our environment where these rules do not hold sway. And we think a little differently. And we're going to move on to part 2 for that. I had to share this picture with you because it's one of my favorite things of all time. And also, a lot of people who are at home right now might feel a little bit like they're getting, but she's still got a smile on her face, right? So instead of thinking that way, how can we as adults think differently? Not only for ourselves and our own happiness, but so that we're good, healthy models for the children that are looking to us on how to be an adult. So some things that my school has used. The first thing that we do is we love this book. It can be a little bit hard to get sometimes, but you can get it off of Amazon. It's called The Coyote Guide to Connecting with Nature. Okay, now Montessori called nature the original designed environment. It's the original environment for human beings. And so one of the things that these authors did, and this is why we love the Coyote Guide, is John Young up there in particular, and my school's been lucky enough to get to go to lectures with him and get to talk with him extensively. John Young has traveled all over the world and he's looked at native societies. And he looks at how societies that have been around for a very long time function. How do they include everyone? How do they align themselves with nature? What are the things that make them successful and make people feel supported? And if you get a copy of this book, one of the things that you're going to see in it is references to something called the 8 shields. And we'll come back to that in just a minute, okay? So instead of thinking about your school as a school, think about your school as a Montessori campus for all ages, including the adults. And we know what to do with the children because Montessori wrote a lot about that. But how can we energize and include these adults, staff and parents? There are a lot of ideas in this Coyote Guide. And one of the first things that it talks about is nature. Montessori spoke of nature as the original prepared environment. The more time we spend in nature and the more time that we spend adjusting our lifestyle to be a more natural lifestyle, the happier we're going to be. Now, by this, I don't mean you out in the forest, but you'll notice when you get out in nature, you slow down. When you take time to notice the seasons and build your celebrations around them, you find a rhythm that is often missing in our daily life. So we work to make nature a big focus at our school. Now, this can be difficult if you're at a school that's got, you know, an old parking lot as its playground. But you can still take people on nature walks. You can do gardening. You can do science projects outside. You can talk about the biomes. The Waseka curriculum is fantastic, and it's all built around nature. If you can have experiences in nature, whether they're taking your elementary students camping or taking your toddlers outside to plant an herb garden, you are going to find that people are going to slow down, and they are also going to start to open themselves up more because this is the place they were designed to be. Now, the next thing that we do is think about how traditional societies operate. And this is what I meant when I talked about the 8 shields a few minutes ago. In that Coyote book, and you can also Google 8 Shields John Young, and there's all sorts of resources online for it. When John Young started doing his research with traditional societies, he found that basically there was a wheel of life, okay? So if you start over here in the East, and you think about East as being when you are born, you are going to move as you age around the points of the compass. You're going to start as an infant, then you're going to move into young childhood and childhood. Then you're going to become a teenager where you're starting to strike out on your own. Then you might be a young adult that is seeking things. You may be starting a family. And then as you get older and a little bit wiser, you start to support those that are younger around you. And when you're in your twilight years, you are one of the wise people, one of the tribal elders of the group. Because we are so spread out in a lot of our societies, and the idea of the village is often gone, where you might not even know your neighbor next door. When that concept falls apart and you don't have a variety of ages living and working together, the support system also seems to disappear. You have, I'm sure you've seen families that come to your school and they say, I don't know what to do. I have this young child and I'm so worried about messing this up, because they don't have an extended family or an extended village around them to help them with child rearing. You might have teenagers, and they've actually done quite a bit of research on this. They find a lot of times teenagers, when they become teenagers, they don't have mentors. And that's when gangs move in, because gangs act as mentors. And that's appealing to a lot of young people because they don't have anyone else to help them through that transition to adulthood. And a lot of our elderly people are never given an opportunity to share their stories and share what they know. The traditional society often sets up a relationship between those tribal elders and those teenagers so that the teenagers can help the elders be needed and help them with things they need help with physically, and the elders can act as a guidepost and give advice to those teenagers. So in a more traditional society, you have a village raising everyone and helping them through their transitions in life. We don't have that a lot now, but you can build it at your school. There are people in your school, grandparents, new parents, young people, alumni who've graduated, who are now teenagers, who can all be a part of this community and support each other. Now, there's lots more information on 8 Shields and this concept. I highly recommend the Coyote Guide. That will get you started talking about it. And it also includes lots and lots of introductory lessons for families in nature. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is build an intentional culture of peace. Peaceful cultures and inclusive cultures don't just happen. They're built. And if you've ever gone through an accreditation process at your school, you know that one of the very first things they do is ask you to sit down and come up with a vision and mission statement. And that's not, you know, we want to have X number of families in here so that, you know, we have enough money to operate. No, you're saying, what is the culture we want here? At my school, we talk a lot about our culture of peace, and everything we do stems from that. Our main mission is to model and build a culture of peace that is inclusive to everyone who wants to be included. This is a lot of heavy stuff, isn't it? But it has revolutionized and changed the way that our school operates. My school is not my work. It is my home because of this. So the antidote to I don't need anyone, I'll handle it myself, is finding a community. All right. And you have people waiting to be a part of a community at your school, but a lot of times they don't know how, because they might never have been invited to be a part of a community before. And so this is where we're going to start to get down to the nitty-gritty, is what are we as the adults who are interested in creating an intentional culture of peace and a place where adults can grow spiritually, what are we going to do to invite them to be part of this conversation? So here, at least at our school, is our tribal mindset for our whole tribe, young and old. We're not going to do it ourselves. We're going to do it together. And we're going to help find mentors for anybody who's open to the idea in the school. When I first came to the school, I mean, nobody walks into any new situation perfect. We all have a lot of baggage, right? And I remember that my head of school, Toby Gress, after working with me for a few months, really thought I could benefit from spending some time talking to Michael Gress, her husband, who is one of the owners of our school. So he would do carpool every morning, and she put me out there to work with him. We had lots of time to talk in between cars. And the things I learned from Michael, I didn't even know I was being mentored. That's how slick they are. The things that I learned from Michael during the 2 years that I was doing carpool with him have changed my life and have made me the person that I am today. I was able to let go of a lot of baggage and let in a lot of new ideas. And I will be forever grateful to both Toby and Michael for giving me that opportunity. So when you're bringing in new staff or you have old staff, look around and think, what qualities do they want to develop? What qualities do we think will help them? And who else do we have in our community who might be able to impart or expose them to some of those ideas? We also have the idea that everybody needs support. If I walk into my school and say, oh, I'll just take care of it, the people I work with go, really? I'd like to help you if you'd like help. Do you think that's wise? I don't want you to have to do too much on your own. You need time for work-life balance. And we say it right out. We show our support by constantly being very open and honest. I will tell you, one of the things that I miss most about school during this shutdown is that it used to be I would walk in the door any morning and no less than about 5 or 6 people would tell me that they loved me straight up. You might think about in your school, when was the last time you told someone there you loved them? Do you love them? You might. And just saying, I admire you. I like what you're wearing today. I love what you do for these children. You know something I'd like to learn can really change the culture of your school for the better. A lot of people come to us from broken families, and we give them the opportunity to build a new tribal family with us. We also hold up the idea that observing and resting are valuable. One of the greatest things about my boss is that she knows I work hard and she never presses me to work harder. Instead, she says, I want to make sure you're getting enough rest. And that makes me feel loved. It makes me feel looked after, right? And there's always the offer of help. Every age and ability who be included will be. We don't, if you're looking at your staff at school and your parents at the school and everybody's the exact same age, you're missing part of your tribe. Get those grandparents involved. Invite them to things. Get those siblings who aren't of that school age involved. And here's another one that I like. Tribal elders will monitor and keep the laws. And part of their job is to remind people who they are. Now, building an intentional culture of peace is not easy because most people have never participated in one before. And you might have someone who starts doing something nasty like gossiping. But if you've built a strong vision and mission statement that says we are an intentional culture of peace, then that's when you have one of those tribal elders pop in and say to that person, you know, we really do not value gossip in here. And start to model the ways in which it can be changed by saying positive things or giving people the benefit of the doubt. We model apologizing. Everything that you do that is graceful in front of parents or other staff members or children is going to rub off on them. It might take a while, but it will work. What's the rush? I know we have a lot of people who, when we first started building this culture, would say, oh, we were supposed to come in from the playground 10 minutes ago. Well, that's not necessarily following the natural rhythm of things. For most of our children, they get there at 8 in the morning and they're with us until 3. So if we're 10 minutes off one way or the other throughout the day, it's not the end of the world. Let's do what Montessori said and follow that child and follow the natural rhythm of life. Maybe it's a beautiful day and they need 10 extra minutes out on the playground in the sun. Maybe they want to sing one more song. Don't worry so much about all those 5-minute periods, and try to look throughout the day and take a deep breath. It will all come together. Balance being important, and nature is important. And we've already talked a little bit about nature. Our tribe celebrates differences. We celebrate transitions. Money and winning is not our goal. One of the things I most admire about my head of school is when we have families who have been part of our tribe for a while and somebody loses their job, she goes to them and she says, if you really want your child here, we will find a way to make it happen. If there's already chaos happening at home because you've lost your job, we don't need to add more chaos to your child's life by telling them that they have to switch schools because you haven't found a job by the 1st of the month. What can we do as a tribe to help you? These shows of faith and support for our family make our families stay a long time. Our staff stays a long time. Our families often become staff members They send every one of their 6 kids to our school because of this culture. Our school does almost zero advertising other than our website. Most of our families come by word of mouth because the parents say, I wish I'd gone to a school like that when I was a child, and I feel loved and supported there. They don't only love and support my child, they love and support me. All ideas are heard in a peaceful way. We might not do them all, but we do treat people's input with honesty and respect. So even if you were to just to look at your school or your community and think, are we doing these things? Are we promoting these things? Even just starting with one is very good. And remember, calm is a superpower. We try to model calm. It can be really careful. I'm really careful. It can be really crazy when suddenly you hear that the governor is shutting down all schools for 2 weeks in the last 10 minutes of the school day. But if we model calm and peace, that will spread through the community and it will get to the children as well. Here's our part 3 manifestation. Ooh, I gotta talk faster. It's already 1:36. You guys. I love this photo. Because you know, there's a lot of photos out there of moms with babies, but a lot of times we don't get dads. And I love that sleepy little face. So as I said before, we're not thinking of ourselves as a school, we're thinking of ourselves as a community. Our Montessori environment has events for adults. Now, there's a book I'm going to show you on the next slide that is great. And our staff read it collectively this last summer, and it drastically changed some of the ways that we did things at our school. One of the ideas that it came up with, now it's written by a Montessori inspired school. One of the ideas that it came up with is use your events not for administration, but celebration. Instead of having back to school night where you're going over once again how many pairs of pants you need to have in your child's cubby and how to use the carpool line. These are adults. They're supposed to have read all of that in the handbook. If they don't, there's going to be natural consequences when they don't know what's going on. That's what Montessori said, right? They won't know the information. So instead of spending our group meetings on things going over that we could put out in a handout, we use them for celebration. One of the things we did this year was at our back to school picnic. At the end of it, we made an announcement and we said, we have put a line at the end of the field. That line marks the beginning of our school year and a new growth cycle as a community. When you are ready, walk with your family over that line and be welcomed to the new year. And the first thing that happened after that was a 3-year-old went ripping across the line and everybody burst out laughing. And the parents walked with their families and deliberately stepped over the line. We got more feedback, positive feedback from that little ritual of marking a new year and more participation in the feedback than we had on just about anything else we'd done. So we kept going. For back to school night, instead of having each teacher talk up and say, these are the supplies you're going to need that I already sent you, instead we had each teacher stand up and talk about why they were a teacher and why they were there. For me, I stood up and I said, I am not here because I am a teacher. I am here because I am an activist for humankind. Because as a Montessorian, that's what you are. I had parents come up to me in tears and giving me so many hugs at the end of my speech, and the other teachers did too. We're using these gatherings to mark the passing of time, to mark our traditions, to mark our growth together. And people will show up for that. They're not necessarily going to show up for the 7th back to school night where you tell them what brand of slippers they need to buy, but they show up for that and they start participating. I've talked a little bit more about a minute ago about expecting responsibility. By telling parents things 7 and 8 and 9 times, we were enabling them not to read the literature that we sent out. So all of that boring administration stuff, yes, they need to know it, and we expect that they read it. We're not going to call them 15 times and say, did you get your permission slip in? Usually they only need to miss it or mess it up once before they never will again. So we expect responsibility from the adults in our group, just as we expect it from our children. We spend our money on community, not advertising, and the word of mouth takes care of it for us. We have a staff member called a parent liaison who is in charge of greeting new parents and keeps her ear to the ground and talks to parents regularly and is involved with social media, so that if they have a question and they feel uncomfortable talking to another staff member or a teacher for some reason, they know they can go to the parent liaison. Sometimes parents feel bad asking questions that are actually great questions, and they just want to ask another parent. Our parent liaison was a long-term parent at our school before she became the liaison. All of our new families have a mentor that helps them through the first several months and the first year of school. Somebody that they are introduced to in person at the picnic, and whose phone number and text and email they have, so that they don't feel like they're venturing on this journey alone. They've got an experienced buddy if they want it. And one of the other things we do is I give a lot of the tours at our school. And one of the things I end them with is I say to the parents, Dr. Montessori told us part of our jobs were to bring the outside world in for the children. There is no way we can do an entire world with just our staff. What is your passion? What do you want to come in and show the children? I've had parents come in and belly dance. We'd have parents come in and do bonsai lessons, computer programming, all sorts of things. The parents share their passion. They meet the children, they meet the other parents, they get involved, and they keep giving to the community, and they stay. When we have conversation about hopes, best vision, and an opportunity to connect to mentors, the families stay and become staff, and this becomes our community and our life's work, not just our jobs. We end up with a diversity of ages and abilities. We have a better work-life balance. Think about the performance reviews that might go on at your school if they were more about work-life balance and passion, and less about and what long-term goals the person saw for themselves spiritually, rather than did you do X and Y, yes or no. There's lots of alternative performance reviews out there. In time, we talked about that earlier, looking at the whole day or the week and not the hour, so that we can better follow the child. We are very careful about allowing competition into our community. We trade among our community members and share resources. We have part of our newsletter where people whose children are outgrowing things offer to rent or donate them to other members of the community, so that everybody's supported and everyone's not spending $1 million on brand new equipment. We model self-love and appreciate diversity. We actually have a thing we do that I learned in Montessori training called the gratitude circle. That's a ritual that our staff does together, where we have the opportunity to express appreciation for each other. I will tell you, when I'm at school, if I walk in and say something like, oh man, I think I gained like 10 pounds, I really need to lose weight, 3 or 4 teachers will look at me and say, you are beautiful just the way you are. Do you know what that does for you during the day? We have fun together. We do things outside of regular school hours. One of the best things we have is we have a dad who's been at school forever. He's got 3 kids in our program. He runs something called Dad's Night Out, where the dads go to different craft beer places once a month, and they have a sober driver, and they have the opportunity to talk and chat and ask questions of other dads about Montessori in school, or just being a dad. Some great friendships have been built there. A lot of times dads don't really get to do as much social things, or they're not quite sure how. And this is a great opportunity for them. And like I mentioned before, we build traditions. Hang in there, people, I'm almost done. So I mentioned that book that was from the Montessori inspired school called Courage to Grow, the one that said less administration, more tradition. There's a ton of great ideas in this book, and you can get it right off of Amazon. Highly recommend it. Now, being on a spiritual path does not prevent you from facing times of darkness. It teaches you to use the darkness as a tool to grow. If you decide to build an intentional community, an intentional, peaceful community in your Montessori school, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be people who like to gossip, or like to disconnect, or like to be coddled and don't take responsibility. And our tribal elders, the people who run our school, do the best that we can to mentor them. But you also have to be unafraid. There may be people who, if they are disruptive continuously, despite all effort of your culture of peace, maybe this isn't the best place for them right now. Maybe their real community is out there somewhere, and by enabling them, you're preventing them from finding it. So we, as the people who run the school and are seasoned teachers and parents, we're very protective of our vision and mission statement to model peace and to be a peaceful community. And every decision we make grows from that source. One of the things we tell people coming right in the door are rules like this. We have this clear vision and mission statement developed by the community leaders. We put it on everything we send out, and we talk about it all the time. We have a conflict resolution plan in place, and we follow it and regularly practice it. Gossip is not celebrated at our school. Anything impacting the peace of the community will be addressed, usually by our head of school, talking to the parents who are having difficulty and trying to understand where they're coming from. Our peace is more powerful than your payment. We're not going to keep a family there that has no intention of being part of what our group vision and mission statement is. You also need to know who has the final say on that. Usually your head of school or your owners. We practice conflict resolution and talk about it before it's needed, so that anybody who needs to use it already knows how. We do that in staff meetings and at gatherings. We do not enable poor behavior. We've talked about that earlier. We have a clear plan of who does what and how problems will be resolved, and we work for the peace of the whole community. Doing this means you have to listen to your own voice, your own soul. You know how to do this. You just have to remember, right? We try to be happy where we are, where we'll grow. We're not going to get this all right overnight. Definitely not. This takes years to do, but it is a project worth doing. And the best way to start, spend some time thinking and making a list are, what are the traits of your best self? Who are you in your dreams? And then go after them and be that first model that changes the culture of your school for the better. So that's the end of my presentation. It went on long. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. And I know it's a lot of ideas to hit all at once. You can talk about spiritual development of the adult forever. So I hope this wasn't too overwhelming, but I hope it gave you maybe a starting point and maybe a little bit of a paradigm shift into how to look at the families at your school and your staff. So let's see if I can switch back to my Zoom here. I see Barb there.
I'm back. That was so wonderful. I loved that presentation, and I loved learning the rituals and celebrations that you have at your school, because I feel, every school is looking for something. And I think, we do get caught up in, okay, parents need to know these things and, the administrative part of it, but shifting that focus to community and, making them feel welcomed is such a powerful tool. And I don't think it's one that many schools do use. Maybe they do. I don't know. I haven't done research on this, but I don't hear this approach much. And I can only imagine how grateful your families are to be part of that community. They're so lucky.
One of the things that's been very interesting while we're all teaching from home now is we run a circle time for young children 5 mornings a week. And at the end, we stop the recording and let the children say hello. And you will not believe how many adults and children have written us and said, I get out of bed every morning for that circle time. And you will not believe how many of them are shouting, I love you through Zoom at the other families, because our tribe is being kept apart physically right now. But it is heartwarming, and it's a great way to start a tough time to hear 40 different families all yelling, I love you at each other as they sign off from Zoom every morning.
Well, that's so sweet. I love it. Yeah, if anyone has any questions for Annie, you can put them into the chat. I see a lot of comments coming through that they loved the ideas and how wonderful the presentation was. Do you have any tips? I know you kind of talked about it, but I think here's a question from Jess.
Okay.
She says, you talk a lot about a positive team. What do you do with that one person who, no matter what, walks into work every day so negative?
We have had those before. We
all have.
We have. And
Yep.
Generally, what happens is we usually spend some time, they'll walk in the door and they'll say, we'll say, good morning, how are you? And they'll say, traffic was terrible and my lunch got eaten by a bear. And usually we spend a little time trying to make them upbeat, but very quickly it becomes apparent that presentation of coming in the door and immediately bringing everybody down is not preparing us as Montessori adults to walk into a classroom and model being peaceful and happy to the children. So generally what happens is shortly after that, the head of school, and usually another senior teacher, a lot of times it's myself, will sit down with that person and say, we've noticed this about you. What's going on? Do you need help? And we let them know right up front that we see the behavior. You think when you're working with children a lot of times and they're doing something they're not supposed to do, sometimes they're not aware of it. Sometimes they're getting away with it. And a lot of times simply walking over and just showing them that you're there and you're aware of what they're doing can help them adjust. A lot of adults have such habits of being negative and they've never been in an environment where everybody is positive, that they're doing it without realizing. So we give them the benefit of the doubt first and say, this is what's going on. We've also actually on our staff asked everybody to find a buddy, somebody that they like and trust. Usually it's a classroom teacher with one of the assistants or something. And they have a little signal for each other where I will say, I'm having a really rough day today. I didn't get enough sleep. If you hear me being grumpy or short or negative, I want you to come over and I want you to whisper the word popcorn in my ear, and I will try to change it. People in the community have to have a willingness to hear feedback in order to be able to change. If you have people on your staff who straight up can't take any feedback unless it's positive, one of the discussions your head of school will probably eventually have with them is this the right place for you? Because we are all learning. And this might not be the right place at this right time. That has happened before, where we've had to say, we think we are preventing you from finding your real community because we've had 18 conversations with you about this topic. And at this point, this is impacting our peace.
Thank you, Annie. I love that. There's another question. Do you think that anyone can influence and change the energy of a school? What if the energy already feels so solid and you are brand new or the least experienced, etc.?
It can be an uphill battle. The first thing you need to look at is who is your leadership? Is your head of school on board for this? Or is your head of school the most negative person in the room? if the person that is the final arbiter of what goes down is the person who is the most not at peace, then you have to ask yourself, is this location ever going to be an authentic Montessori school? Or does it simply have Montessori over the door? I'm very lucky in that I have heads of school who are very experienced with this sort of thing and model it on a daily basis. You can change the culture. I've been in schools before where I went in and everybody was in these habits of just, and I thought, I'm going to give this a college try. And things did change. If you can get to a tipping point, and you'll know, because people are hungry for positivity in today's society, you will learn really quickly who's the most positive, supportive adult at your school, because everyone's going to them for advice and everyone says wonderful things about them and everyone wants them to give the lecture on training. But if those people are not being given an opportunity to spread the joy, you're not going to get off the ground. So one of the things that we tend to do the first day of any staff training session that we have, when we're getting back together in the fall or when we have staff days, usually has an opportunity to share, and we talk about peace education, peace among adults, and we practice conflict resolution. If your head of school is very razor focused on talking about how much money you're making and saying negative and gossip, you're probably going to have an uphill battle. But give it a try first, because it might, if you have enough teachers that are on board, they'll go around the person who's being negative to a certain extent.
Yes, there's everyone's saying they need more Annie time.
There's lots of Annie time on Open Door Montessori. Probably too much.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see if there's any more questions over here besides all the comments that we want more Annie. Let's see.
So yeah, I mean, one thing you can do is the next time you have a staff meeting, if your head of school is interested in this, have your head of school say, our next staff meeting is going to be about how we build a culture of peace at this school. We are going to work on a vision and mission statement. Everybody come prepared with what you think the vision and mission statement of the school should be. That's going to be very revealing about who you have on your team. And it's going to help you build a consensus about where you're going. And once you have those laws in place, your tribal laws in place, this is what we stand for, this is what we do, then anybody who's breaking those is very quickly going to find themselves in the minority. And they're either going to change and become part of the group, or they're going to realize this might not be the arena for them. I love everybody's writing so much. I wish I could read this quickly.
But I do think, going back to the original question about, do you think can you make a difference? And I have to say, and piggyback off of what you said, absolutely. And you have to believe that you can. And you have to believe that you can, that this culture isn't something you have to fall into if you feel it's not in, if it doesn't align with what you feel is the Montessori philosophy. I mean, someone has to bring it to surface, right? And someone has to be that change. So empower yourself to use the tools that Annie shared and the resources that she shared in this presentation to inspire you to do that. And I don't think there's no better time. And when we someday get back into our classrooms, right?
Right. And I mean, I saw someone wrote in the comments, teachers are always encouraged, leave it at the door when you walk in with the children. I will tell you that since my school has adopted this mode of thinking, I almost never have to leave anything at the door, because I walk in and I go, I feel ill. And 10 people say, are you okay? Did you have breakfast? Would you like me to get you a juice? Do you need more help in your classroom today? And so I'm walking into my classroom supported, which means I don't have to leave my real self outside the door, because my real self is accepted and loved and supported throughout the entire school. I'm kind of a weird person, you know, and people accept me there. My school is the first place I've ever been accepted for who I am. And that's why they're going to have to carry me out of there, because I'm staying there till I die. And if you were a head of school, wouldn't you want staff people who said they were staying till they died?
I love it.
You guys are so sweet. I'm reading the comments and it's just lovely. Thank you for I feel so loved, you guys.
You are so loved, Annie.
You did a culture of peace in 1 hour. I'm welcomed to your tribe.
No, you're the best, Annie. I personally always feel more inspired just in your presence, whether it's through a phone call, a Zoom chat, or when I was lucky enough to spend the time last summer when we did our videos together. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge, and yes, just thank you. Thank you.
I feel the same about you. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful to Christopher that he brought us together.
And I said that when I said it's probably the best matchmaking that's ever happened. But,
we should start a Montessori teacher matchmaking website.
I'll give you a call later, Anna.
Thank you so much for having me on today, you guys.
Thank you, Annie.
No, thank you, Annie. This has been incredible. No, such a beautiful presentation, Annie. Very heartfelt. Wow. I've written a lot of notes here, and could you send me the PowerPoint? I'd love to put that on the website. This is great.
I will send it right now.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful resource. I want to read those books that you talked about. I love how you spoke about the ritual. I think that's something that's so beautiful and powerful, and in the home, but you know, our school is our home as well. And if we're treating traditions as family with our parents, then that's equally important when we're experiencing with the children in our care. So I so admire that. I love how you talked about mission and values, and I like your idea. I think that's something that we'll absolutely talk about doing at Rock and Roll, at least. I think that sounds really powerful to do. So thanks so much. Love your humor and your wisdom here, Annie, as well. And look forward to seeing you in Boston to get to make more videos with Barbara.
Take down that travel stuff so I can get to Boston.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll wrap us up here for the day. Thanks so much, everybody, for being on the call here. What awesome presentations today by Annie and Derreck. So inspirational, and hearing both of your stories and the wisdom that you shared. I learned a lot myself, and just so glad that I got to participate in this. What a tremendous opportunity to hear from both of you. So thank you so much. We'll continue on tomorrow, Wednesday. We have Letty Rising, who's going to be joining us. She is one of the principals at Trillium Montessori. She does a lot of lessons and articles for Trillium. You might know their website, one of the more popular Montessori websites here in the States and abroad. I was speaking to some people in Europe that were very familiar with Trillium as well, so I know it gets around. Then we have Elizabeth Campbell, who's going to be speaking about the toddler environment. And then we have Rafael Roman, who is going to be doing our Spanish presentation tomorrow, and is an incredible educator and intellectual. So I think he'll have some really wonderful things to share. So looking forward to some wonderful conversations and discussions tomorrow. Thanks again, everybody, being on. Have a great afternoon and evening. Enjoy yourself. Get outside. Enjoy that nature. Go find a coyote, right? Be safe.
Love you guys. Go find your tribe.